All right, folks. I told you, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed are kings. I want you each to be kings and queens, emperors and empresses in the business world. And you can get there by latching onto something that's new and nobody else knows about. And like I said, blockchain's been around here a while, but people just don't get it. And it's not that hard. This is a small lecture. It's not going to go deep into what I call the technological doo-doo. You know, I had a career in sales and marketing. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a software developer, but I was able to understand the technologies I was selling and to frame them in a way that decision makers, that buyers could understand what it is they were getting for their money. So blockchain is yet another technology that is here. And I want to go through some basics. You can look it up on your own. There's a plethora of information on it. I strongly suggest you educate yourself. This is what I'm doing. So I know a little bit more than you right now, but I expect you to surpass me quickly and you be the teacher and I'll be the student in learning about blockchain. So first of all, just some basic stuff. You've heard about Bitcoin and maybe Ethereum, and you've heard about this this one DOGE. I don't even know how to pronounce it. This one, what they call an altcoin, that's been very, very volatile. But first, I just want to say blockchain is not equal to cryptocurrency. Two different things. First of all, understand that a cryptocurrency is simply a digital currency in which the transactions are verified and the records for the transactions are maintained using a decentralized network with cryptography. In other words, it's secure, it is encrypted, you can't break into it, and is verifiable. So that is a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It's not like paper money. It's not like gold. It's not like stocks, but it is considered an asset. Now, cryptocurrencies use the blockchain technology. So the two are not interchangeable. They're related, but when you hear someone say blockchain, they're not necessarily talking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So make sure you understand that. Blockchain is the underlying technology that make cryptocurrencies work. So understand that. This is what we're focusing on briefly. This is a 5,000-foot overview. So there's this idea, and I've looked around. There's some people say there's 5 pillars, there's 4 pillars, there's 3 pillars. I looked around, and I've basically seen what makes the most sense is that there are 3 pillars of blockchain. In other words, there's 3 things, main properties of blockchain technology, which helped it gain widespread acclaim. First of all is this idea of decentralization. Before Bitcoin, and if you've heard of BitTorrent came along, we were used to centralized services. The idea is very simple. You have a centralized entity that stored all the data, and you'd have to interact with it to get whatever information you needed. Another example of a centralized system is the banks. They store your money, and the only way you can pay someone is by going to the bank, withdrawing cash, or writing a check that goes back through the bank. So it's centralized. And those of you old enough to remember the phrase client server, okay, that's an IT phrase. It's a perfect example of this. So when you Google search for something, you send a query to a server somewhere, and then it gets back to you with the relevant information that you're searching on. That is simple client server. Now, centralized systems have treated us well for many years, but they have several vulnerabilities. Firstly, because they're centralized. All the data is stored in one spot. Okay, now things are going to the cloud, they're distributed, but there's still a lot of legacy systems where the data is stored in one spot. This makes it too easy a target for the bad guys. If the centralized system were to go through a software upgrade, it would halt the entire system. You got to shut it down. This happens here on campus. They shut down Blackboard, mainly on weekends when less people are using it, but they will do an upgrade or to PeopleSoft to Blackboard, and I, as a faculty, generally can't access it during that time. You probably can't access it during that time either because it's centralized. So the worst case scenario, what happens if the server gets corrupted and something bad happens to it? Well, everybody's affected. So what happens if we no longer depend on centralization? What if we do something called decentralization? In a centralized system, the information is not stored by one single entity. Everyone in the network that participates owns the information. So in a decentralized network, if you wanted to interact with your friend, then you can do so directly without going through a third party. That was the main ideology behind Bitcoin. You and only you alone are in charge of your money, which you keep in a digital wallet. You can send your money to anyone you want without having to go through a bank. The next pillar of blockchain is transparency. Now, transparency, it's interesting because on one hand, you can see what's going on because of transparency. On the other hand, you can still be private. So how can you see what's going on in the blockchain, and how can it be private at the same time? Well, a person's identity is hidden, okay? So in the blockchain, you can't see that Joe bought a Bitcoin. Joe's identification or his address is encrypted, and it's, some gibberish alphanumerical bunch of characters, okay? You can see, though, whatever those gibberish characters are, you can see, though, they bought one Bitcoin, all right? So it's transparent in that you can see what the activity, you can see what the transaction was, but it still maintains privacy. So understand that's an important pillar of blockchain, as is the last one, immutability. The important thing about this is once something has been entered into the blockchain, into this database, basically, it cannot be tampered with. So that's going to be extremely valuable for financial institutions. So by connecting all the different blocks together, and we'll see an illustration for that in just a second, it'll be fail-safe. The network will know if someone is trying to mess with it. So once it's created, it cannot be tampered with. Fantastic. The three pillars of blockchain: decentralization, transparency, and immutability. So there are different types of networks we're going to have an overview on. Very, very simple. We talked about this whole centralized network. You can see in the middle, there's like a hub. And all the other nodes on the network have to go through that hub if they want to communicate with each other. Very, very simple, very straightforward. Then there's this idea of a decentralized network. So if you look at the different nodes, they're not all directly connected, and they're not all connected to the same hub. Looks like there's a couple hubs, and to get to one person, you have to go through one or more other nodes. So that's the idea of decentralized. There's no central hub to the network. Then besides centralized and decentralized, there are distributed networks, and there's basically two types. One is a public network where the users are anonymous, but you can see by this schematic that everyone's pretty much connected to each other. So they have direct access to each other. No hub, no middleman. And then you can take the distributed network a little further and make it private, where the users are not anonymous. It's a closed network. Not just anyone can get on it. So, keep this in mind: centralized, decentralized, and distributed networks. Blockchain works on a distributed network. So what exactly is the block in blockchain? It's very simple. It's data, okay? It doesn't physically look like that, but this is just a way to remember it. It is data. In the block, it contains data. It can contain data for one transaction or multiple transactions. It can contain data for the transaction of one person or multiple people. Okay, so it contains data on transactions. It connects to what's called the chain to a previous hash. A previous hash is an ID for the block that was created before it. So you have one block, there's a block that was created before it. On this new block, there is the previous hash, which correlates to the unique hash on the previous block. And the block itself that you're creating has its own hash or unique identifier. It's pretty simple. You got data, you got a previous hash to connect to, and you have your own hash, which is going to connect to subsequent blocks. So the blocks go in a blockchain. You have what's called the genesis block. Okay, you have to start somewhere. So you do have a first block. It has data. It has a hash. I'm not a techie guy. By default, there's no need for a previous hash because there's nothing before. This is the very first set of data in the blockchain. So it has data and a hash. It may have, I don't know, it may have some sort of 000 number to show you that it is the very first one, but it also has the unique identifier that's a hash. Then subsequent transactions happen and new blocks are created for that. And so you can see here, block 2 is connected to the genesis block because it knows the hash of the genesis block. Then you have block 3 come along. Because block 2 has its own hash, block 3 connects to that, and it has its own hash until you get to block N, okay, which could be zillions and zillions and zillions of blocks away. That's how the chain works. Each block connects to its previous block because it knows it's a very unique thing. It's that simple. I don't think I can make it any simpler. So there are tutorials out there if this isn't sinking in. It took me a while, but now it's like as obvious as the nose on my face. So understand this is all a blockchain is. It's a series of data that's connected to each other in a subsequent fashion. Now the blockchain process, okay, this is also easy too. Once I really looked into it, and I encourage you to, it's really not that hard. So let's walk through a very, very simple process. Say someone requests a transaction. They want to buy a Bitcoin. They want to buy a cryptocurrency. So they use the app that you do to transfer your US dollar into a Bitcoin or into an Ethereum. And what that does, the transaction has a block created. The block represents the transaction. Remember, with the data, and it's going to have a previous hash, and it's going to have its own hash to identify it. Once you hit buy, the block is sent to all the nodes in the network that are participating in the transaction. The nodes then validate the transaction. Yeah, this is happening. The guy put the money up. He's buying so many fractions of Bitcoin. Boom. We can verify that. We validate it. Then the block is added to the existing blockchain. It's that simple. and the user is alerted that the transaction is complete. The point being, though, the nodes validate the transaction. It's like almost like crowdsourcing. There's wisdom in the crowd. You have all these various nodes, hundreds of them, that say, yep, that's okay. When everyone says that's okay, it's okay. So that's how it works. You request a transaction, a block is created, the block is shared with every node on the network, the nodes validate the transaction, the block is then added to the existing blockchain, and the transaction is complete. That's pretty simple. So why is blockchain important? Well, once again, because of transparency. You can see what's going on. It actually helps increase transaction frequency and efficiency. It's all algorithm. It's all in the network. There's no middlemen. There's no people involved. It is more secure. You cannot change it. It is very, 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 very hard to hack because there's so many nodes that are watching. It's like a neighborhood watch. You got everyone sitting on their front porch, and the bad guys aren't going to do anything because there's too many eyewitnesses. So in addition to more transaction frequency and efficiency, you can do it faster. It proliferates through the network. It may take a couple minutes sometimes. Sometimes it just takes a couple seconds. It's customizable. You can make the blockchain do a lot of different things, and we'll get to that in a second. Wherever there's internet, you can participate. You can buy stuff. Cryptocurrencies, real estate, whatever. It mitigates cheating, okay? You got thousands of eyes, thousands of nodes on the network watching. You can establish a public blockchain or a private blockchain. You can include more participants. The sky's the limit. There's high reliability. It works because it's distributed. Say there's a power outage in Uruguay. Well, so what? Still got all these networks running all over the place, all the nodes all over the world. And here's the big one, folks. This is a huge disruptor. It removes or drastically reduces intermediary fees. In other words, a lot of the junk that the bank charges you can now be significantly reduced or eliminated. Banks at first are not going to like this, but that when they realize it's happening and they can't stop it, they're going to jump on board and figure out how to make money from it. So any industry can use blockchain. After this little talk lecture, take any of these industries and do a Google search. Agriculture blockchain, manufacturing blockchain, entertainment blockchain, healthcare blockchain, government blockchain, technology blockchain, education blockchain, all that. This is a technology that any industry can use. It's not just for tech geeks. Understand, and it's not just for finance. It is any industry. So the opportunity for you in this technology, the sky's the limit. You can take your knowledge and go to any industry, any company in any industry, and say, hey, here's a solution. Here's a good way to solve this problem you've been worried about. So banking, there is a link in your team project area. This is straight from the article. There are plenty of banking applications of blockchain. If you think this is something you want to get into and learn more about, by all means, read the article. So interbank transactions, remittance, smart contract enforcement, crypto banking, record sharing and storage, clearing and settlement, loan syndication, regulatory technology, know your customer, anti-money laundering, okay, regulatory reporting, trade finance, data security, increasing transparency, and serving the unbanked. Two things I want to point out. First, the KYC, AML, the little magnifying glass bottom left, anti-money laundering. Too many people thought skeptically when Bitcoin first, when Bitcoin first came out, it's just a way for criminals to money launder. Well, guess what? Cash, hard cash is still the best way to money launder. I mean, think of all the bartenders and waitresses that don't report the cash they get. You can't track it. Bitcoin, once again, is trackable. Even though it's decentralized, it's transparent. It is immutable. The money launderers are realizing this is not the easy way to do it. We still need cash. That's how we make our money laundering money. The other thing is this idea of serving the unbanked. Now, what people don't realize is 1 of 10 adult working Americans do not have credit or a banking account. They work at low-level jobs. They get paid in a check or cash. If they get paid in a check, they go to a check cashing place that will take, skim 1 to 2, maybe even 3% off the value of the check, just to give those people cash, because they don't have a bank account. So blockchain may be able to help serve the unbanked, and you should read up on that if you're interested. So there's plenty of things, and if you do, I know in this article they mentioned JP Morgan Chase and Company. So check out what they're doing. If you think it's going to be applicable to the case competition, by all means, figure it out as part of the solution. So I just want to say that blockchain works and it's here to stay. I mean, a lot of my career hockey stick because of the internet. 26 years ago, I started my career in the internet. People were skeptical about it. Oh, it's just a glorified bulletin board. Oh, you can watch cat videos. There's no application for business. I knew they were wrong, and yes, they were wrong, and I'm vindicated because I saw what's going on. I think this is something that before you know it, people are going to take it for granted. Think about our everyday lives. What do? You have breakfast or lunch or dinner. You heat it up in a microwave. When you buy a microwave, you go to Home Depot or Best Buy or wherever. Do you ask the person, oh, gee, how does a microwave work? No. You assume it works. You buy it. You mount it on in your kitchen. You plug it in. You put in your hot dog. You press 30 seconds and boom. Nobody cares how it works. We take it for granted. The same with our iPhones. When you bought your iPhone, maybe you wanted to know, well, how do I use it? Oh, well, it doesn't take long. You touch something and it opens up an app. I mean, it's very intuitive, but nobody asks, how does the phone work? How does the camera work? Nobody asks that. We take it for granted. The technology is here to stay. Same with the TVs. We go to Best Buy, we take it home, we pull it out of the box, we hook up the cable, we plug in the electricity, boom, we're seeing 150 channels. Nobody asked the guy in the blue shirt at Best Buy, gee, how does a TV work? Nah. Same with your jet. You go traveling somewhere, do you ask the person at the ticket counter, oh, well, how does a jet work? No, we all take this for granted. Blockchain's going to be the same way, folks. It's here to stay. So this is my little evangelization for you. Hopefully it inspires you to learn more. These places, CoinDesk, BlockGeeks, Investopedia, 101 Blockchains, Blockchain Council, these are some of the best that I've come to find, but there is a multitude of information out there to learn more about blockchain. Obviously, CoinDesk is cryptocurrency slanted, but all these other, and Investopedia, of course, but the underlying technology is important to know, to understand its impact upon business and how it can solve specific problems in a particular industry or organization. That's going to make you a one-eyed king in the land of the blind.